Welcome to this new video of the series The Audio Sanity Channel Tutorials. We explain today how to set up your tonearm and cartridge like a pro, like no one ever explained you on YouTube. Don't forget your tonearms and cartridges tools. Follow the instruction of your tonearm and cartridges to define which tool you need for a proper setup. Now your toolbox for a perfect setup. You will need an electronic or mechanical scale, a VTA azimuth ruler, a standard protractor or heartily recommended an arc protractor, and a test record. Remember, this is not an option. Prepare your tonearm and cart for setup. Your tonearm should be properly installed on your deck. The arm tube set parallel, roughly parallel to your platter. The anti-scatting set to 0. The vertical tracking force between 1.5 and 2 grams is not critical at this moment. And a nice cup of tea or coffee ready. Now let's start. Now put on your platter an old record. A record you don't care, there's no problem if you scratch it. Step number 1. VTA, vertical tracking adjustment. A vertical tracking adjustment consists in making your arm tube, your arm, perfectly parallel to your record. To do so, use your VTA azimuth ruler and follow the instruction in the video. You should adjust the height of your tonearm. Follow the instruction of your tonearm. If your tonearm couldn't reach high enough to have the arm to parallel, or your tonearm has no VTA adjustment, you can use some spaces like in this picture. On the contrary, if your tonearm is sitting already at the minimum height but is still too high, you will need to add some spaces between the head shell and the cartridge. Step number 2. Azimuth alignment. To align your azimuth, put the VTA azimuth ruler on the platter like shown on the video, and put your head shell and cartridge just behind it. You should adjust your head shell cartridge in a way that the line of the head shell cartridge is parallel or coincide with the grid of the VTA azimuth ruler, like shown now on the video. You will have to adjust left and right until you don't reach a perfect parallelity. If your tonearm hasn't this kind of adjustment and still you can't have the azimuth right, it means that your tonearm might be defective or not correctly mounted on your deck. Step number 3. Cartridge alignment. Now with standard protractor. This kind of protractor has 2 grids, and you have to align your cartridge that is parallel to the lines of each grid. First set your cartridge on the first grid and adjust your cartridge until the cartridge is aligned to the grid. Fasten slightly the screw of your cartridge in a way that is secured but you can still move it. Now move your cartridge to the second grid. Move the protractor forward and put your cartridge on the second grid. Now you have to check if the cartridge is aligned. If not, move the cartridge maybe slightly forward or backward and try to align to the second grid. and then check back with the first grid. You have to repeat this operation so many times until the cartridge is not aligned on both grids. It might take quite a bit of time. It is a bit of a painful operation. Way better with an arc protractor. The arc protractor is different from a standard protractor because it has an arc draw on it. This is exactly the distance that there is between the needle and the pivot of your toner. And there are two grids. These two grids are the null points. Now, you have to follow the needle exactly the arc. You will not succeed the first time. So, the first time you have to put the protractor in a position that your needle follow an arc perfectly parallel to the arc of the protractor. I have done so. You have to move the cartridge forward or backward until the needle don't touch the arc. In this moment, your needle will follow the arc perfectly. I've done so. Put your needle on the first grid and keeping the needle on the point, align the cartridge to the grid. If everything is done correctly, move the cartridge on the second grid, and now this should be already perfectly aligned. If not so, it means that something was wrong, and repeat the operation from zero. Step number 4. Set the vertical tracking force. Many tonearm have a grid or a scale drawn on the counterweight or otherwise that is intended to set the vertical tracking force. We heartily recommend to use a scale instead because it will be much more precise than these scales. First things, remove your mat from your platter because the stylus must be the closer possible at the rear position of the record, and put your scale on it. And follow the instruction of your toner. Set the vertical tracking force as recommended by the cartridge manufacturers. Step number 5. Set the anti-scatting. If you look at the internet, they will tell you that the formula to achieve a perfect anti-scatting look like in the picture now. In many toners there will be some kind of knob or ruler that will set your anti-scatting, allegedly the correct way. Well, sorry to say that these scales are most of the time incorrect. Reason being that the anti-scatting force that needs to be applied depends on many factors. One factor is the inertia of your toner. Another important factor is the profile of your needle. Another factor is the tracking force. And then this cannot be standardized in a simple knob. It must be measured. It is also important that the anti-scatting is set correctly, for two reasons. Number one, if it's set badly, incorrectly, it will use a shoulder of your groove more than the other, and the long run will ruin your records. But most importantly, is very important for have a correct tracking all over your record. Put your test record on the platter. Now, most test records will have several tracks that are designed to set your anti-scatting. These tracks are made of different modulation, from lower modulation to higher, and will help you to set step by step your anti-scatting. Follow the instruction of your record to know exactly where the tracks are and how to operate. Well, you should go step by step, starting from the track with the lowest modulation, and you will hear a tone, generally 300 Hz. If the tone is clean, means that for this modulation your anti-scatting is correct. Like now. If you hear some buzzing, means that you have to adjust your anti-scatting, plus or minus, until this buzzing disappears. Go through all the modulation until you get the best result possible for your setup. Now you will hear the buzzing noise that indicate that for that modulation the anti-scatting is not correctly set. It sometimes is impossible to set the anti-scatting correctly for the highest modulation. Check if the tracking is correct, just to be safe. Most test records have 3 tracks, one at the beginning of the record, one in the middle, and one at the end that test if the tracking is correct. If you hear a clean 300 Hz tone in all 3 tracking, it means that your system, your arm and cartridges can track correctly. The beginning, the center, and the end of the record. If not, try to realign your cartridge, recheck your anti-scatting setting. Step number 6. Resonance test. Now a few words about the theory. If you look anywhere in the internet, they will tell you that the resonance frequency can be calculated following this formula. Well, this is quite incorrect, because this formula is first theoretical only, and second can calculate the resonance frequency of a mass that is moving vertically, more or less like a suspension of a car. But a tonearm is not a suspension of a car. A tonearm is mounted on a pivot, and there are different masses moving around this pivot. Since there are masses moving around the pivot, we have to determine which kind of inertia these masses have. Now, these are quite few of the formulas you should apply to calculate the moment of inertia. We will not do it now. It's quite complicated, aren't they? But at the end of the day, if we make a simple experiment, like in this last graph, we can see that the effective mass of 3 rods with the same mass but with different mass distribution and thus moment of inertia, they have different effective masses. And this is the case of our tonearm. Therefore, the only way to check which resonance frequency your system has is to use a record test. On top of that, the formula we saw at the beginning won't tell you in any way which is the amplitude of the resonance. When the cartridge and tonearm start to resonate, they move vertically or horizontally, so they increase the moment of inertia, and these can have destructive effect. Which are the right frequencies? It is assumed that resonance frequency between 8 to 14 Hz is considered safe because 14 Hz, the top of our range, is far enough from the lowest frequency which is recorded in your groove, which is 20 Hz, so there is no risk that the musical information might trigger resonance. And the lowest, 8 Hz, is far enough from the frequency that can be generated by defect of the record due to warping or off-centering that can also trigger your resonance. Now we see in practice. Forget all the formulas and internet calculation. Use your test record. Your test record should have two tracks. One to measure the lateral resonance and one to measure the vertical resonance. We start with the lateral one. This is a visual test. Don't listen at the sound, but you have to look carefully at the cartridge, how it behaves at the different frequencies.
Low frequency resonance test, lateral, 25 Hz. Twenty-three Hz. 21 Hz. 19 Hz. 17 Hz. 15 Hz. 13 Hz.
If we are looking now carefully,
11 Hz.
here we have a minimal resonance. You see how you shake
9
laterally the cartridge at 11 Hz, but very well damped.
7 Hz.
Now the vertical resonance test.
Low frequency resonance test.
Now we should see for any vertical moment of the
20
cart
Hz.
of vertical moment of the tonearm cartridge combo at any frequency.
18 Hz. 16 Hz. 14 Hz. 12 Hz.
Again we see that we have a very slight vertical
10
movement
Hz.
at 10 Hz with a negligible amplitude. This tonearm
8
cartridge
Hz.
setting is nearly perfect. Now, what to do if your system
6 Hz.
show a resonance outside our 814 Hz limit of the amplitude is very wide. If you're out of frequency, it means that your cartridge is not good for your toner. If you have a high compliance cartridge and heavy toner, well, you can't make a toner lighter, can you? All we can do is try to put some damping device to the toners. Some toners have this device is available. You can purchase it separately. And see if the effect can be reduced. If you have a low compliance cartridge and a light toner, you can try to add some weight next to the cartridge to make the effective mass of your toner higher. If the matching of your toner and cartridge cannot be corrected, you have to decide if you have to change the toner or you need to change the cartridge. Conclusions. Well, if you follow this tutorial step by step, you should be able to squeeze out of your system the best the system can do. Please, if you enjoy the content, leave a comment and subscribe. Also a nice like will be much appreciated. And thank you really for watching.